The day I almost lost my family's land was the day I discovered I owned the entire valley. Linda Whitmore called the cops on my illegal cabin at 7 a.m. Police sirens cut through the morning mist, smoke from my chimney mixing with diesel exhaust. She had no idea that I didn't just own the land. I owned her mortgage, her husband's business lease, and the road she drove in on. 3 months of escalating harassment, noise complaints when I was dead asleep, structure violations on a cabin that existed before she was born, threatening letters demanding $500 a day fines. Random fought the fines on her, but Linda had no clue what she'd started. By the time I was done, she'd be facing courthouse steps, news cameras, and a truth that would wipe that smug smile right off her Botoxed face. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your location. I want to know if HOA Karens are this bad everywhere. Let me take you back to where this all started. My grandfather bought 2,400 acres in Montana's Clearwater Valley back in 1963 for $800. That's what a decent dinner costs now. He got timber rights, mineral rights, water rights, the whole enchilada. Smart old coot knew what he was doing. I inherited this land when I was 28, right after my parents died in a car accident. Spent every summer here as a kid, learning carpentry from Grandpa, building this A-frame cabin with my own hands. 1,200 square feet of pure independence, solar panels, well water, composting toilet, completely off-grid and legal in every single way. After burning out in corporate software consulting, I chose the simple life. Work remote, breathe clean air. No traffic jams or office politics. Just me, the mountains, and the sound of wind through pine trees. But gentrification was creeping up the valley like a slow avalanche. California money buying up plots, building McMansions that looked like they belonged in Beverly Hills, not Big Sky country. The newest eyesore was Clearwater Estates. 32 luxury homes ranging from $800,000 to $2 million managed by Whitmore Properties. Enter Linda Whitmore. Picture this, 52 years old, bleach blonde hair sprayed into a helmet, driving a white Escalade that probably cost more than most people's houses. She was HOA president and the real estate developer, which should have been the first red flag. Her motivation was crystal clear. She wanted my land for Phase 2 expansion. With my property, she could triple the value of her existing lots. Her first move was subtle. A certified letter claiming my cabin violated neighborhood standards and demanding $500 per day in fines. The letter came on paper so smooth and expensive it felt like silk between my fingers, a stark contrast to the honest, rough-hewn logs of my cabin walls. When she showed up at my door for the first inspection, I'll never forget the sound of her stiletto heels clicking on my wooden porch boards like a woodpecker with anger issues. Her perfume was so overwhelming it mixed with the pine sap scent and made my eyes water. She stood there with her pristine manicure, looking at my work-stained hands like I was something she'd scrape off her shoe. "This structure is completely inappropriate for our community standards," she announced, waving one manicured finger at my cabin. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice level. "This cabin was built in 1995. Your community didn't exist until 2018. Her research must have confirmed what I already knew. My land wasn't technically part of her HOA. Grandpa's deed predated her development by 40 years. So Linda pivoted strategies. If she couldn't use HOA rules, she'd find any violation to force a sale. Building codes, health department, fire marshal. She was going to throw everything at me until something stuck. The smell of her cigarettes from her idling Escalade mixed with the pine-scented mountain breeze as she stood on my porch, plotting my downfall. "You can't fight progress," she said with that fake smile real estate agents perfect in the mirror. "This valley is going to be developed whether you like it or not." I watched her drive away, her white Escalade kicking up dust on the gravel road my grandfather had built with his own hands. What Linda didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that she'd just declared war on the wrong family. Grandpa hadn't just bought land, he'd bought power. And I was about to learn exactly how much power that was. Linda's first real shot across the bow came 2 weeks later. An anonymous tip to the county inspector about an unpermitted structure. I had to laugh. She wasn't even trying to be subtle anymore. Inspector Jake Morrison showed up on a Tuesday morning, apologetic, but professional. Good old boy with calloused hands and work boots that had seen actual work. "Sorry about this, son. Got a complaint. Have to check it out. You know how it is." "No problem, Jake. Come on in. We walked through every inch of my cabin. Jake's flashlight beam danced across hand-fitted joints, proper electrical work, structural supports that could probably survive a tornado. His eyebrows kept climbing higher as we went. Son, this place is built better than most houses in town. Who did the work? My grandfather and I. Took us 3 summers. Jake pulled out the original building permits from 1995, signed and stamped by his predecessor. Everything legal, everything documented, everything done right. Whoever called this in was either blind or lying, he muttered, making notes on his clipboard. But Linda wasn't done. The smell of her cigarettes lingered in the mountain air the next morning when I found her business card tucked under my windshield wiper. On the back she'd written, State Environmental Agency complaint filed. Illegal sewage disposal. You're done. She was escalating to state level, trying to overwhelm me with bureaucracy. Time for my counterpunch. I called my college buddy Marcus, who traded his environmental science degree for a law degree and now specialized in exactly this kind of harassment. Bring in a professional septic inspector, he advised. Document everything, and I mean everything. The septic inspection happened at 6 a.m. sharp. The rumble of the pump truck echoing across the valley probably woke every neighbor within 5 miles. But it was worth it. Professional analysis proved my system was cleaner than most municipal plants. The inspector, a weathered guy named Bob who'd been doing this for 30 years, whistled appreciatively. Son, I've seen million-dollar homes with systems half as good as yours. Whoever complained about this doesn't know shit about sewage, if you'll pardon the expression. But here's where it got interesting. Bob mentioned something that made my morning coffee taste a whole lot better. Funny thing is, we got another call this week about gray water discharge into Clearwater Creek. Traced it back to that new development up the road, Whitmore Properties. While Linda was attacking my perfectly legal septic system, her own development was dumping contaminated water into the creek. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a chainsaw. Linda's harassment campaign had just exposed her own environmental violations. Linda's harassment campaign reached a new level of desperation over the next month. Daily wellness checks from the sheriff's department became my new normal. Bogus noise complaints when my cabin was dead silent. She even called Child Protective Services, claiming my unfit living conditions were endangering children, despite the fact that I lived alone and the nearest kid was 5 miles away. The breaking point came at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Deputy Johnson's cruiser came rumbling up my gravel driveway, red and blue lights cutting through the darkness like angry fireflies. Domestic disturbance report, he said, clearly embarrassed. Sorry, but I have to check. I stood there in my pajamas and bare feet, cabin dark behind me, no other soul within miles. Deputy, do I look like I'm disturbing anyone but myself right now? He sighed, making notes he probably wouldn't file. I'm getting 2 to 3 calls per week, all from the same number. Between you and me, this is harassment, plain and simple. Linda escalated to the legal system, filing for an emergency injunction, claiming my threatening behavior at an HOA meeting I never attended. Small claims court on a Thursday morning. Linda arrived with an expensive lawyer in a suit that probably cost more than my truck. I represented myself with a manila folder and the truth. The judge, a no-nonsense woman named Patricia Wells, looked about as impressed with Linda's theatrics as I was. Your Honor, Linda's lawyer began. My client fears for her safety due to Mr. Johnson's increasingly erratic behavior. I stood up, pulled out my phone, and projected security camera footage onto the courtroom wall, date and timestamps clearly showing I wasn't anywhere near the supposed meeting where I had allegedly threatened her. Judge Wells dismissed the case in under 5 minutes. Miss Whitmore, I'm warning you about filing frivolous complaints. This court has better things to do. Time to bring in professional help. I hired private investigator Sarah Chun. What she found made Linda's harassment look like amateur hour. Your Linda has a pattern, Sarah reported over coffee at Maria's diner. She's done this exact thing in 3 other communities. Always targets landowners adjacent to potential developments. The pattern was crystal clear. Linda had been sued twice for HOA board conflicts of interest. Her real estate license was suspended in California for undisclosed dual representation. Most damning of all, she owed $180,000 in back taxes on her Montana properties. The community was rallying like I'd never seen. Old Pete revealed that Linda had tried to buy his land for half market value, threatening eminent domain when he refused. Linda told me the government would take it anyway if I didn't sell to her. Pure intimidation. Maria shared that Linda had been spreading rumors about health code violations at the diner, trying to pressure her into selling the building. 30 years feeding this community, and she wants to turn my place into a Starbucks. David Kim discovered he'd paid $50,000 over market rate for his lot, with Linda pocketing the difference through hidden fees. She called them premium location adjustments. I called them theft. But Linda wasn't done. Her financial desperation was making her bolder, more reckless. The woman was doubling down on a losing hand, and I could practically smell the fierce sweat through her expensive perfume during our chance encounters at the post office. The game-changing discovery came while I was researching county records for my defense against Linda's latest bogus lawsuit. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor. I was looking for ammunition to defend myself and instead found a nuclear weapon. Buried in the maze of county filing systems, I stumbled across something massive. Linda's development company had taken out a $2.3 million construction loan in 2019. Standard stuff for a developer. But the collateral wasn't just her own land. It was a complex web that included future development rights across the entire valley. That's when I started digging deeper. My grandfather hadn't just owned his 2,400 acres. The old records revealed something that made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips. He owned the mineral rights under most of the valley, including Linda's entire development. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was what else I found. Grandpa held first mortgage position on 3 key properties that Linda had been using as leverage for her construction loan. Properties she claimed to own free and clear when applying for financing. How had this been hidden for so long? Grandpa's estate was complex, managed by an old-school attorney who died in 2018. The new estate lawyer had never fully explained the scope of my inheritance. County records were scattered across multiple filing systems, some dating back to territorial days, filed under different naming conventions. Grandpa's 1963 purchase included all rights, appurtenances, and future development considerations, legal language from the 1960s that gave me veto power over any development affecting the watershed. The leverage bomb was incredible. Linda's entire development was built on land where I controlled mineral and water rights. Her construction loan was in default. She'd missed 2 payments during her harassment campaign against me. The bank was getting nervous about her ability to complete Phase 2, which required my land to be financially viable. That's when I found the handwritten note tucked inside the original deed. Grandpa's careful script on yellowed paper, for my grandson. Never let them turn this valley into another strip mall. I sat in my truck outside the courthouse holding that note and finally understood this wasn't just inheritance. It was a stewardship responsibility. Grandpa had known that someday someone like Linda would come along, and he'd prepared for this fight 60 years before it started. Linda's desperation reached new heights as her financial world started crumbling. Anonymous Craigslist ads appeared offering my abandoned cabin for $500 per month rent. Fake social media profiles posted my address as a squatter location where people could camp for free. She even hired a private security company to patrol around my property line. The sabotage escalation was both pathetic and dangerous. My solar panels were mysteriously damaged overnight. Security cameras caught a white Escalade creeping around at 2 a.m. My driveway was blocked with no trespassing signs that I'd never posted. Most seriously, someone had tampered with my water well cover, potentially contaminating my drinking supply. The bribery attempt came on a Tuesday morning. Linda approached me directly, her usual arrogance replaced by barely concealed panic. "Let's be reasonable here," she said, her voice pitched higher than usual. "I'm prepared to make you a very generous offer. $400,000 cash for your cabin and 50 acres. When I politely declined, she increased to $600,000, then $800,000. Her final offer made my morning coffee nearly shoot out my nose. $1.2 million plus assumption of all legal fees. "I appreciate the offers, Linda," I said, audio recorder capturing every word. "But this land isn't for sale at any price." My counter offer was calculated to drive her over the edge. "Tell you what though, you can purchase my approval for Phase 2 development for $5 million. Cash only." Her face cycled through confusion, rage, and terror in about 3 seconds. "What the hell are you talking about? You can't block development. You're just a squatter with delusions of grandeur. I wonder what your investors would think if they knew about your financial situation. I mused, watching her pupils dilate with panic. Linda's final desperate gambit was a masterpiece of fraud and stupidity. Forged documents claiming my grandfather had sold development rights in 1987, 24 years after his original purchase. A fake environmental impact study claiming my septic system was contaminating groundwater across 3 counties. And the crown jewel, an attempted restraining order claiming I'd threatened her with violence during a confrontation that never happened. The forgery unraveled faster than a cheap sweater. My estate attorney took one look at the supposed signature and started laughing. This isn't even close to your grandfather's handwriting. Whoever did this has never seen his actual signature. The notary stamp was even more ridiculous. Dated from a notary who died in 1985, 2 years before the document was allegedly signed. Professional paper dating tests confirmed what we already knew. The documents had been created recently using artificially aged paper. Linda had literally tried to forge history. The setup for the climax was perfect. Community center booked, local news alerted to a major development story. Sheriff's deputies on standby for expected disruption. Linda had no idea that her attempted empire was about to become a cautionary tale. The Clearwater Community Center had never seen anything like it. 150 residents packed into a space designed for 100. The air thick with tension and anticipation. The evening news crew set up in the back corner, cameras rolling. Sheriff's deputies flanked the exits, expecting trouble. Linda's faction huddled near the front. Her expensive lawyer in a $3,000 suit. A handful of fake supporters who kept checking their phones like they'd rather be anywhere else. And a security guard who looked increasingly uncomfortable as the room filled with angry locals. My community filled the rest of the space. Old Pete and his Vietnam veteran buddies, weathered faces set in grim determination. Maria with her extended family, 3 generations of Valley residents. David Kim and the other defrauded development buyers armed with legal documents. Linda called the meeting to order, her voice pitched higher than usual, hands trembling slightly as she shuffled her presentation materials. Tonight, we'll be voting on the Phase 2 expansion that will bring prosperity and progress to Clearwater Estates. Her PowerPoint was all corporate polish and empty promises. Artist renderings of McMansions nestled among clear-cut hills. Economic projections that assumed infinite growth. And at the center of it all, my grandfather's land marked as future development parcel. This illegal cabin, Linda said, pointing at a photo of my home, represents everything holding our community back from reaching its full potential. The HOA board recommends immediate eminent domain proceedings. That's when I stood up. Point of order. I'd like to address the assembly. Linda's face flushed red. You have no standing here. This is a private HOA meeting. Actually, I said, pulling out the microphone I brought, I do have standing. Would you like to see my mineral rights documentation? The room erupted. Linda tried to refuse. Her lawyer whispered urgent advice in her ear, but Deputy Johnson enforced meeting procedures. Let him speak, ma'am. This is still America. Let him speak. Let him speak. The chant started with Pete's veterans and spread through the entire room until Linda had no choice but to step aside. I connected my laptop to the projection system and displayed grandfather's original 1963 deed on the wall. Ladies and gentlemen, Linda's been trying to steal land she never had any right to touch. The revelation hit like a physical force. I explained mineral rights, water rights, development restrictions, the comprehensive legal framework that gave me veto power over any development affecting the watershed. This woman has spent 3 months harassing me for land that I not only own, but that she needs my permission to develop around. Linda's desperation exploded. Those documents are fake. He's a squatter and an environmental terrorist. He's been threatening me for months. Really? I clicked to the next slide. Let's talk about threats. The evidence avalanche began. Marcus presented court-certified deed documentation. The forensic accountant revealed Linda's embezzlement of HOA funds, her double-mortgaged properties, her unpaid taxes. The environmental lawyer showed photos of Linda's illegal creek contamination alongside lab results proving my water was cleaner than municipal supplies. But it was the community that delivered the real knockout punches. Old Pete stood up, his voice carrying the authority of 8 decades. Linda tried to cheat me out of my grandfather's land, too. Offered half what it's worth, threatened eminent domain when I refused. Maria was next. She's been using HOA money to pay her personal lawyers. 30 years I've been feeding this community, and she wanted to destroy my diner for a parking lot. David Kim's revelation stunned even me. She overcharged me $50,000 for my lot and called it a premium location fee. Pure theft. Then came the mic drop moment. A man in a dark suit stood up from the back of the room. Miss Whitmore, I'm Robert Chin from First National Bank. Your construction loan is in default, and we're calling it due immediately. Your collateral is insufficient, and this gentleman owns the mineral rights under your entire development. Your Phase 2 expansion is financially impossible. The room went dead silent. Linda's meltdown was spectacular. She screamed about conspiracies and unfair treatment, threatened to sue everyone in the room, and in her rage, accidentally admitted to forging the 1987 documents. Those papers were perfect. You can't prove they're fake. Deputy Johnson stepped forward, notepad ready. Ma'am, did you just admit to document fraud on camera? The community vote was swift and merciless. Phase 2 expansion rejected 87% to 13%. Vote of no confidence in Linda as president. Unanimous resolution supporting my conservation efforts passed by acclamation. As Linda was escorted out, still screaming threats and promises of revenge, I addressed the stunned audience. Linda, you just threatened me in front of 150 witnesses and 3 cameras. I think you're done. 1 week later, Linda Whitmore was arrested for document fraud and embezzlement. The sight of her in handcuffs on the evening news felt like the final chapter of a story that had consumed my life for 3 months. Her properties entered foreclosure proceedings. Her real estate license was permanently revoked. The woman who tried to steal my family's legacy was facing 5 to 10 years in federal prison. The legal resolution came swiftly. My quiet title action confirmed comprehensive land rights across the entire valley. Environmental violations resulted in a $500,000 fine against Linda's company, money that would fund watershed restoration for decades. The HOA dissolved Linda's development company contract and elected new leadership with Maria as president. I launched a conservation easement program protecting 1,800 acres of the most sensitive watershed areas. 3 neighboring families joined immediately, creating a buffer zone that would prevent future Linda Whitmores from destroying what took nature centuries to build. The community benefits multiplied like ripples in a pond. We established the Clearwater Valley Scholarship Fund using Linda's forfeited deposits, sending 3 local kids to college every year. The Conservation Trust protects the watershed for future generations while allowing sustainable forestry and responsible development. Old Pete's property values rose 40% due to conservation protections, securing his retirement after decades of hard work. Maria's Diner became the unofficial community center, thriving as the heart of our restored valley. David Kim not only recouped his overcharges through the class action lawsuit, but became one of my closest friends. 3 other communities contacted me about similar developer schemes, leading to a statewide network of rural landowner advocates. The state legislature introduced the Linda Law, preventing HOA conflict of interest abuse, real systemic change born from our local fight. Standing on my cabin porch at sunset, watching the valley vista unmarred by McMansions, I finally understood what Grandpa meant about stewardship. This wasn't just about property ownership. It was about protecting something irreplaceable for people not yet born. Always research who's really behind development pressure. Financial desperation drives most harassment. Mineral rights are often more valuable than surface rights. Check your family's old deeds. And remember, HOA board members must disclose conflicts of interest. It's the law in most states, even if they pretend it isn't. Drop a comment with your worst HOA or property dispute story. I read every single one and respond when I can. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see more stories about standing up to corrupt authority, and join our Facebook group, Landowner Rights Warriors, for legal resources and support. Because together, we're stronger than any corporate bully. Grandpa, I kept my promise. The valley's safe.